Ukrainian civilians continue to confront Russian tanks and troops as the Russian army slowly tightens its grip on Ukraine.
Around our village was a lot of tanks, and I hear every day the bombing.
Thousands of Ukrainians flee their homeland. EWTN News In Depth is in Poland, speaking to shocked and saddened refugees and those who are helping them.
The voice of the unborn goes right in that capital, and it's loud and clear, and people begin to listen.
Life after Roe, debate in the States. We begin an in-depth look at the next chapter in the pro-life movement as the focus goes from federal to state abortion laws. First stop, Maryland. And we're 1 year old. A look back at where we've been and a look at where we hope to go. EWTN News In Depth starts now.
I've met people today who could barely speak, people who were both smiling and crying. I mean, young children, very tired.
A sea of humanity floods into neighboring countries as more than 1 million Ukrainians flee the Russian bombs and artillery shells pounding their country. Russian army attacks trigger a fire at a complex housing the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. That prompts Ukrainian officials to warn of a European-wide catastrophe if shelling continues near Ukraine's many nuclear facilities. A grim situation gets grimmer as the Russian assault on Ukraine intensifies and civilian casualties mount with increased targeting of residential areas. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. The fire at the nuclear plant complex was extinguished early Friday, and no high levels of radiation were detected. However, the Russians did capture the plant in southern Ukraine. Nuclear scientists warn mishandling of Ukraine's nuclear power facilities could mean widespread disaster well beyond Ukraine's border. This as the Russians slowly progress towards the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. As they move forward, they're taking smaller towns as they go. These images of decimated apartment buildings in a town northwest of Kyiv show the toll on the civilian population as the Russian army bombardment shows no mercy. The U.S. Defense Department estimates the Russians have launched more than 500 missiles since the war began just over a week ago. Increasingly, the targets are civilian, including schools and hospitals. Death toll estimates mount by the hour. The Russians have also gained ground in their bid to cut off the country from the sea, affecting important supply routes. In other areas like Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine, missiles hit several state buildings, as well as the university there. Russian airborne troops have landed, escalating the fighting. And mostly unarmed civilians continue to show bravery as they try to resist advancing Russian troops. This video obtained by EWTN Ukraine shows Ukrainian civilians being attacked by Russian armored personnel carriers. Though we do not know the full outcome of what happened here, we know, unfortunately, that a blast did sever the leg of one of these civilians. Father, our entire EWTN audience is praying for you and your parishioners. We're praying that you're safe. Tell us, what is the situation like right now for you, for them, and for the city residents around you?
Thank you for the prayer, and we need so much your prayer because the war is never stopped here in Ukraine. It is night day. So the situation is difficult because we are already tired. No one night we do not slept well because we need to go under sirens to the underground and to spend half a night there or maybe all night because the Russians plane are bombing our cities because what has happened in 2022, it could imagine any of us that is possible in today's world, in Europe, in Ukraine, that it has happened, the war. So for us, it is shock. Now we try to do everything possible to help the people to be close with them.
I can't imagine what that's like, Father Vyshkovkyy, the idea of sirens waking you up in the night so that you could go hide. But we understand that you have personal experience with this and with Soviet persecution. Are you able to share that, a little bit of that with us?
Yes, Ukraine was for 75 years under Soviet persecution. When we speak about church, 30,000 churches were destroyed by communism. When I was 11 years boy, it was forbidden to go to the church, and teachers stand in front of church. It doesn't allow us to go in the church. And when we last 30 years. We were happy to have a freedom. Finally, after the 75 years of persecution, now we suffer another invasion. Can you imagine that till now 30 children, 30 died because of war, and 840 injured, so 840 become invalid because of this war. Is only nine days, and we as Ukrainian, we do everything possible because this situation united us so much, much more. A lot of volunteers between the countries are doing everything to bring the water, because some cities have not water, have not heating, to collect also some bread, other things to help this. So we believe that every war has his finished. Only God is eternal, and
That's right.
we believe that we resist and we won.
And so you know exactly what's at stake. Tell us about the pastoral care you and your colleagues from EWTN Ukraine are now giving to the faithful for them to get through this very challenging moment.
We try to be connected with our parishioners in every possible way. They know that if we have not connection, internet connection or cellular phones, we always are in church. From the morning till the evening, all day we are in church. And many people arrive because of many our parishioners belong to territorial defense of Ukraine. So the women with children, we help to them to go out from the Kiev, from the other city, to safe place. And men remain here, and sometimes only for a few moments men go to church to receive communion, to confession, for a few moments, but other arrive to pray. We have all day adoration for the finish of war, for peace. We also are in touch through our servers, priests, and also through volunteers to visit elder people who couldn't move from their flat, who never never are strong to go outside of the city. We visit them. We bring them food, especially bread. Sometimes we need to go for bread to outside of the city, and it's 2-3 hours to be in
Wow.
queue to bring bread. With other parishioners, we are in touch through WhatsApp and Viber messages, because many of them are impossible to go to our parish when they are living the other side of the city, and the city is close and not easy to go. So we try to be with people, and we remain. I am telling personally, me and in my confreres, Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, we remain with them till the end. We never leave them alone.
Well, we thank you for those efforts, and we'll be praying for your safety and asking the Blessed Mother for protection for you and everyone in Ukraine. Thank you so much, Father.
Thank you too.
Saluto cordialmente tutti I polacchi.
I cordially greet all the Polish people. You are the first ones who have supported Ukraine, opening your borders, your hearts, the doors of your homes to the Ukrainians who are escaping the war.
As the war in Ukraine rages on and the humanitarian crisis deepens, Pope Francis praised Poland for welcoming Ukrainian refugees. During his weekly audience, the pontiff said he carries the thoughts of all people suffering from the bombardment in his heart. He said those who wage war forget humanity. More than 500,000 Ukrainians have flooded into Poland in just the last week as the massive exodus continues. Catholic organizations are among the Polish supporters helping the refugees find housing, food, clothing, and psychological support. Reporter Colm Flynn traveled to Poland and the Ukrainian border for EWTN News In Depth.
Carrying their children and whatever they could fit into a suitcase, these Ukrainians never imagined they would someday be refugees, fleeing war in their homeland and walking across country borders, seeking shelter and safety. The numbers are staggering. The Polish government has estimated over 500,000 Ukrainians have crossed the border into Poland, then boarding buses and trains. And this is an example of where many of those Ukrainian refugees will arrive. The city of Wrocław, around 500 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. They come off the trains in a steady stream all day. These volunteers, Polish volunteers, are here to give them advice, give them SIM cards, food and accommodation. Dazed and tired, frightened and scared. Some have been traveling for days, unsure of their final destination. It's mainly women and children. They told me their husbands and brothers have decided to remain in Ukraine to fight. How long have you been traveling for?
2 days.
2 days.
Today is 3 days.
Wow, 3 days. How are you feeling?
So long. Travel so hard.
Are some of your family and friends still back in Ukraine?
Yes. Our husbands stay there.
Stay there. He stayed to fight?
Yes.
To fight. The local Catholic Church is here, coordinating the humanitarian response, offering advice, SIM cards for their phones, food, clothing and accommodation. And so many young people are taking time off school and work to volunteer, like Anna.
So as you can see, there is a kind of the big board with the trains coming. So we have just when people, you just have to imagine people getting out of the train after 2-3 days, you know, of kind of a long trip.
What are the people like when they come here? What state are they in?
They're in shock. And some are still, you know, I'm quite impressed, first of all, with the children. I have to say their majority very, very strong. I don't know how they get it really, but they're super strong. They're not crying. People come in shock, you can clearly see that.
Although living in Poland, Anna is from Ukraine originally, and her parents are still there today.
They're unfortunately in the place where they cannot get out from, because it's Chernihiv, which is on the north, and basically the troops, the Russian troops, you know, they're going kind of through Belarusian border, through the city, so the city is kind of half destroyed, being quite kind of elderly people, right? They went through the fear to the point where they start to be really angry, you know, when they even want to stay there and to help as much as they can, you know, to our heroic army.
Hundreds of kilometers away, in another train station close to the border, the situation is much the same. A crowded arrivals hall of people looking for help. Outside on the platform, waiting to board another train, is Angela.
I live outside the Kiev, like 15 kilometers, so around our village was a lot of tanks, and I hear every day the bombing.
Hearing the Russian army was advancing closer to Kiev, she decided to flee.
And I came from yesterday 9 and just arrived a few hours back.
Are your family with you, or are they still back in Ukraine?
No, my mother in Ukraine and my son live in Poland, in Warsaw.
And what will your mother do?
She told me that I'm leaving, and she's told that I will be here because I live my life, and if something happens, so save yourself and your son.
She couldn't leave her home country.
No, she couldn't leave
What age
because
is
she's
she?
very far from Kiev, from Tres. It's like around 300 kilometers. It's unbelievable to come.
What do you think will happen to Ukraine, to your home country?
We will survive, and I hope that our victory day is near. I hope so. Pray for Ukraine, please. It's really dangerous. It's very, 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 very bad.
Angela's story is like so many others. Split families and uncertainty about what the future will be. In a car park close by, Caritas has set up a tent, helping refugee families get to where they need to go by linking them with locals who are willing to drive them.
I mean, I've met people today who could barely speak, people who were both smiling and crying. I mean, young children, very tired, young children running and playing. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of children. They need food and they need a place to get warm because they spend hours waiting on the border, very often like the whole night, and it's really cold. It's like -degrees and everyone's freezing. And
one Polish man pulls up just as we're filming, and a young Ukrainian family gets into his car.
I'm taking these people from the border and driving with them to Poznań. They got some friends there, so we are living there. They are going to different localization, and we are coming back tomorrow again.
How long is the drive there?
7 hours. Yeah.
And you're a local man, you're just volunteering?
Yes, that's just, I feel that I have to do this for these people, and of course we are also afraid that Putin will not stop there and he can come here, so we have to do everything to help these people and win this fight, because this is also our war.
What is your first impression of the family you've met?
Today they are really happy. Yeah, yesterday people was very afraid. They even didn't want us go to the toilet.
Here. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Oh, you speak English?
So.
So, a little bit. So you came from Ukraine?
Yes.
Today?
Da.
This response by the Polish people is something that we have witnessed in the various cities we visited. And late that night, in freezing cold temperatures at the border with Ukraine, people continue to walk across with no signs yet of the situation getting any better. As the crisis in Ukraine worsens day by day, the refugees who you can see here behind me coming across the border into Poland, they're uncertain of what the next step in their life will be, or what kind of Ukraine they will be returning home to when the day comes they do get to go home. Until then, they're relying on the Polish people for their help and their hospitality. In Poland, on the Ukrainian border, Colm Flynn, EWTN News In Depth.
Observers say the invasion of Ukraine will severely impact relations between the Ukrainian and Russian Orthodox churches. The two have a complicated and long history, just as the countries do. Generally, Orthodox churches are very tied to their territories. It was just in late 2018, early 2019, when the Orthodox Christians in Ukraine declared independence from the Orthodox Patriarchate of Moscow for the first time since the 1600s, a move that was seen as an integral part of Ukraine's statehood to weaken Moscow's influence in Ukraine since the ex-Soviet republic became independent in 1991. The Orthodox Church in Constantinople recognized the independence of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, but Russian Orthodox leaders refused. Now, just days after Russian forces launched assaults on several cities in Ukraine, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, who is close with President Putin, delivered a sermon calling for peace, but avoided calling Russia's actions an invasion and alluded that Ukraine was part of Russia, saying, "May the Lord preserve the Russian land, a land which now includes Russia and Ukraine and Belarus and other tribes and peoples." But not all clerics in Russia seem to support Kirill. More than 150 Russian Orthodox clerics signed an open letter this week calling for reconciliation and an immediate ceasefire, adding that the people of Ukraine should make their choice on their own, not at gunpoint, without pressure from the West or the East. We spoke with our EWTN Rome bureau chief to get a better understanding of the Russian Orthodox leader, Kirill.
There is a close connection in Russia between church and state, and it is said that Kirill is a very close acquaintance to Vladimir Putin, that he has great influence. We just saw that actually this week when the Polish Archbishop of the Bishops' Conference in Poland from the Catholic side actually asked Kirill to intervene with Vladimir Putin to make peace in the Ukraine. So he might have great influence. At the same time, it can also be seen that there might be some interest on his side in bringing back the Ukraine Orthodox Church into the arms of the Moscow Patriarchate.
The head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Metropolitan Epiphanius, likened Russian President Vladimir Putin to the Antichrist and Hitler. Before the war broke out, the Pope had been improving relations between the Catholic Church and Orthodox Church and had met recently with Kirill. There was speculation about another meeting this year. No confirmed date or location had been announced, and now there are no updates. Next week, we will continue with more reporting from Ukraine and neighboring countries and a look at what the Catholic Church is doing to help. Now, we turn to an EWTN News In Depth special report.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Will the U.S. Supreme Court soon overturn or severely limit Roe v. Wade? A look at what's next as the fight for life switches to state legislatures. Our special reporting series, Life After Roe, Debate in the States, ahead.
I think it's because Maryland is the original Catholic colony that Maryland has been so targeted by pro-death policies, including abortion.
Individual states with individual priorities, anticipating a major ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court that could change federal law. We look ahead to an abortion debate shift to the 50 states. Welcome back to EWTN News In Depth. Life after Roe, debate in the states. Depending on what happens at the High Court, America could become a patchwork of different state laws regulating abortion, from trigger laws banning all abortions to states allowing abortion access through late pregnancy. Your state legislature will dictate the terms. In a special reporting series, we go in depth. Our team of reporters, Mark Irons, Catherine Hadro, and Teresa Tomeo, has fanned out across the country to bring you representative coverage of these different types of state reactions should we enter a life after Roe. Our target? 6 states with differing approaches. In the weeks to come, our team will report from California, Tennessee, Michigan, Florida, Maryland, and Vermont to show you the various ways abortion will be regulated or promoted. Those reports paired with robust discussion and interviews. We begin in Maryland, a state with a traditionally permissive approach to abortion. In fact, per capita, it has the 4th highest number of abortions in the country. But pro-life advocates are fighting back to gain more influence. Mark Irons has this week's report, Life After Roe, Debate in the States.
Location, location, location. The value of having a pro-life pregnancy clinic on this busy corner of Annapolis, Maryland, is that it's right across the street from abortion provider Planned Parenthood.
It's just important for people who are looking for an abortion to know that there's choices. And so being in close proximity allows them to see that there actually might be a different place they can go. when they're looking for some kind of help.
Jennifer Brinker works with Wellspring Life Ministry. The non-denominational Christian organization invites women who want an abortion to reconsider.
Our main focus is, can we help her change her mind?
Wellspring has resources and counselors on hand. Licensed medical staff provide sonograms.
The moment when a woman can actually see her child can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's definitely huge.
Sometimes a woman who first considered abortion will choose life for her child. But spending the last 30 years working in this ministry, Brinker has noticed a shocking development in Maryland among women who find themselves in crisis pregnancies.
What's happened over the years is the quickness to make the decision for abortion is coming much faster. It's kind of the first thing that people tend to think of.
Brinker believes the acceptance of abortion in Maryland is caused by different factors.
It's absolutely the culture, it's definitely the politics, it's the accessibility.
And it's all showing up in the state numbers. Though Maryland does not require abortion providers to report data, recent estimates from the Guttmacher Institute show almost 30,000 abortions take place annually, making Maryland's rate of abortion among its population the fourth highest in the country.
We need the state to do their job.
Each year, pro-lifers gather in Annapolis to protest some of the most pro-abortion laws in the country. And it's not just legislation. The National Network of Abortion Funds has a presence in Maryland, allowing women to travel from other states to have abortions there, too.
It's definitely a challenge to fight for life in Maryland.
Laura Bogley, the director of legislation for Maryland Right to Life, tells us abortion is allowed on demand in the state, even late into pregnancy. Restrictions aren't always enforced. The parental notification law for minors who want an abortion can easily be waived. And Maryland is also one of only 4 states, along with Washington, New York, and Hawaii, that voluntarily funds abortion through taxpayer money.
Maryland citizens, taxpayers pay about $6.5 million annually to reimburse abortionists through Medicaid.
Bogley says that's about 10,000 elective abortions Maryland taxpayers are funding each year. And even if Roe is overturned at the Supreme Court, abortion will remain legal under the Maryland Freedom of Choice Act, passed by the state in 1991.
Usually progressive abortion policies are tried here almost simultaneously with New York, California, Massachusetts.
Finding politicians who will fight for life can be difficult. Inside the Maryland state capitol behind me, there are only a small number of vocal advocates for the unborn. Even Republicans, many of them silent on the issue. You won't run into many people like Maryland House Delegate Republican Dan Cox.
I ran for delegate. I won. On the pro-life issue, I made that front and center. I was told by party people off the record not to run ads about it. I decided to go the other way.
Now Cox is fighting even more attempts to increase abortion access, including the Pregnant Persons Act. Maryland Right to Life says the bill strips out protections for women and puts abortion profit over the health and safety of the mother.
We are made in the Imago Dei, the image of God. And when we look at the little innocent life in the womb, God cares about that. He cares about that across the aisle with every political spectrum, and that's a freedom issue. It's a life issue.
And Cox is even making a 2020 run at governor. He's critical of current Republican Governor Larry Hogan, who has signed state budgets that include abortion funding.
Let's make sure that we restore freedoms for the individual, including the unborn.
Though the fight for life will still be an uphill battle, Laura Bogley says the state will be positively impacted if the Supreme Court overturns Roe.
That in itself is going to create a culture shift.
And it could inspire more pro-life candidates to run and overturn state laws. We met Shakina Hollingsworth, a Catholic aspiring state house delegate.
I'm very personally connected to this movement, and I will do everything in my power to make sure the unborn are protected here in Maryland.
It's a state with a rich Catholic history, originally founded as a colony that promoted religious freedom and provided a safe haven for Catholics. But Bogley, a Catholic herself, believes the church should be doing more today to defend life.
We definitely encourage pastors. We wish the bishops would allow the pastors to be more courageously pro-life.
She also says the Maryland Catholic Conference, advocating for Catholics when it comes to public policy, should make the life issue more of a priority. It turns out the values of state residents may not match up with the legislative agenda. According to a 2021 poll from Goucher College in Maryland, 56% of Maryland residents support some protections for preborn children. And the pro-life movement has growing resources. According to Heartbeat International, there are 69 pro-life pregnancy support clinics in Maryland. Compare that with the reported 44 facilities providing abortion in the state. As the work for life continues on multiple fronts, Jennifer Brinker believes the culture in Maryland can slowly change one person at a time. She sees it happen in those moms who choose life.
For here, to work one life at a time is tremendous, because when you add up those lives, you end up with a movement and a change.
Mark Irons, EWTN News in Depth.
To provide political context into the pro-life movement in the state of Maryland, we're joined now by the executive director of the Maryland Catholic Conference, Jenny Kraska. Jenny, you're at the forefront of this fight for life in a state that's fourth in the country as an abortion provider. Maryland, because of recent news, seems to be in a race with Vermont to see who can get a right to abortion on their ballot in November and in their state constitution first. What does this look like on the ground? How does it make your job exceptionally hard?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult challenge right now that we're facing in Maryland. There is a bill that would provide, potentially, if it makes its way through the process, a ballot question this November asking whether we should enshrine abortion into Maryland's state constitution. It's incredibly vague language. It's very broad, including a right to what they're terming reproductive justice. So as you can imagine, that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And when it comes to fighting this issue in Maryland, we're facing an uphill battle, to be very honest with you. Politically, we have a House and a Senate that are predominantly Democrat, and a big pro-abortion and pro-choice lobby in the state of Maryland that is fighting hard to make sure that this ballot initiative gets onto the ballot for November. So we have really been fighting hard on the ground politically to get the word out to our base and to other folks of goodwill that would be willing to make sure that the fight for life happens in Maryland and that this ballot initiative doesn't get put on the ballot.
Jenny, we just heard that 30,000 babies are aborted every year in Maryland, and we know that Planned Parenthood is creating these abortion funds to pay for abortions and to create more abortion tourism. What kind of resources exist to support mothers and families from the other side? And does the church have some kind of a plan to increase that support or to lobby to increase that support from the state?
Yeah, so currently right now, there is no state funding for pregnancy centers, for example, in Maryland. We would love to see something like that happen and have over the years advocated for that to happen. Unfortunately, it hasn't. What the church has done in other networks, obviously, as was mentioned, there are crisis pregnancy centers in Maryland that are helping mothers and their babies. We have a very strong Gabriel network in Maryland as well, that the diocese, all three of them in Maryland, are actively involved in. We have programs through our Catholic Charities agencies that help mothers and children, especially with things like housing and clothing and just basic needs that they need to feel comfortable and hopefully make a decision that is geared towards life. And those things are available in our diocese. We also have been ramping up, I know in our diocese, the Walking with Moms in Need program as well. Again, just to be a support for women who are, facing pregnancies that are challenging or unplanned. We want to make sure that they have the resources necessary to choose life. And those are all really important programs. We're also at the state level advocating, and we did last year, one, I think, great program is additional funding for hospitals to provide neonatal and prenatal care to moms. We know that especially low-income moms and women of color don't receive the proper prenatal care that they need to have healthy pregnancies and bring their babies to term. So continuing to increase funding for things like that, I think, are all positive steps in the right direction. And the hope is always that, we could do more. There is more that needs to be done in Maryland, but we're making, steps where we can.
Let's talk about the funding issue then. In the past, Maryland has tried to restrict free speech for pregnancy resource centers and pro-life advocates. Some of that comes with strings tied to state-level funding. Do you think local and state officials will move to impose limitations like that again?
Yeah, that's one of the big concerns that we have right now with this ballot initiative that's being proposed. Because of the very broad language that is in the initiative, if this were to pass, there's definitely the chance that there will be a great deal of litigation after this is passed to do just exactly that, to impose restrictions that limit speech, that, do a lot of things that would be extraordinarily harmful to the pro-life movement in Maryland, to freedom of speech in Maryland.
And you brought up the race issue, which I know also affects, it's not just race, low income access as well is something that concerns a lot of people. How is this used both by the pro-abortion side to persuade people to think that this is an issue of economic resources rather than life?
Yeah, I think that there is a misconception that women of color, women that are low income want more access to abortion. And I just don't think that the statistics and the polling bears that out. I think that women, especially women of color and low-income women, want more resources. They want to be able to raise children, healthy children. They want to be able to, engage in the workforce and have economic viability, and be able to raise happy, healthy families and not be offered just more access to abortion.
So then, Jenny, Mark's report discussed the pastoral allies, the ecumenical work that's being done with pregnancy resource centers, et cetera. What can Catholics do in the political sense to make this a priority in Maryland?
Yeah, I think right now, the real immediate need on the ground is to make their voices heard in the political arena. We still have 39 days left of our legislative session in Maryland, and there's still a great opportunity to make your voice heard on the bills that are moving forward in both the House of Delegates and the Senate, and to make sure that your elected representatives know that you are opposed to things like enshrining a constitutional right to abortion and reproductive justice in Maryland's Constitution.
Are you getting enough help and support from church leadership? I know you mentioned the Walking with Moms initiative from the USCCB. Is this something that you need people to write to the bishops about?
Our bishops here in Maryland have been extraordinarily helpful in making sure that we have the resources that are needed to reach the parishes and the different entities within the diocese. We need more grassroots people to come out and to really let their elected officials know. The resources are there. We have incredible, resources available on our website at mdcatholic.org, including parish resource kits. So all of the tools are there to make it extraordinarily easy for you to contact your legislators and let them know that you oppose, especially this constitutional amendment.
Well, Jenny, we'll be looking to you to tell us if this does end up on the ballot, and you can come back and help us stay aware.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenny. Next week, we head to Florida. Contributor Catherine Hadro examines pro-life gains in the Florida legislature in a state that has long been a destination in the Southeast for late-term abortions. A new 15-week ban just passed the Florida Senate on Thursday. Catherine's report on the changing pro-life landscape in Florida is part 2 of our series, Life After Roe, Debate in the States. The Week in Review is next. The State of Our Union, a Supreme Court nominee begins the rounds, and later, Pope Francis and college students, a unique encounter. We'll be right back. Tough talk against Russia tops the Week in Review. It happened during President Joe Biden's first State of the Union address to Congress. There was also a broad discussion of domestic issues, from controlling COVID to keeping schools open, to fixing roads and bridges to controlling inflation. As the Supreme Court weighs the future of Roe v. Wade, the president reiterated his support for abortion in a statement greeted by both cheers and jeers. However, the key opening minutes of the State of the Union address were devoted to a condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which was received by a divided Congress with rare bipartisan applause.
Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, No more.
In a cabinet meeting on Thursday, President Biden announced additional economic sanctions against Putin's inner circle, including a leading face of Putin's propaganda machine, his press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, and a top ally, oligarch Alisher Usmanov, one of Russia's richest men whose assets include one of the world's largest super yachts. Biden said the goal is to maintain the strongest unified economic impact campaign on Putin in history.
I've read and studied the judge's career. I've heard so many good things from so many people. I am just so pleased that the president has nominated someone of such amazing qualification and breadth of experience.
Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson met with senators on Capitol Hill this week, including Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. The Senate Judiciary Committee announced hearings on Jackson's nomination will start on March 21st. If confirmed, Jackson would be the first black woman to serve on the nation's high court. A sweeping new abortion law that passed in the House fails in the Senate. The bill, dubbed the Women's Health Protection Act, would have broadened and codified abortion rights into federal law ahead of the Supreme Court's ruling on a case that could affect the right to abortion. Democrats were 14 votes shy of the 60 needed to overcome a filibuster and would have fallen short of the 50 votes needed for passage. A lone Democrat, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, joined Republicans in blocking the bill. An update now on leaders tackling the Mediterranean migrant crisis. It's a combination of church and state efforts. We previewed the meeting last week on EWTN News In Depth. Some 70 bishops and 60 mayors of major cities of the Mediterranean region gathered last weekend to discuss ways they could come together to help refugees, including health security, culture, and cross-cooperation. Thousands of people try to cross the Mediterranean Sea from Africa on rickety, overcrowded boats, fleeing destitute economies, violence, and war. Many don't make it and drown in what's become known as Europe's graveyard.
Jerusalem, Istanbul, and Athens, interlinked, along with our partners and colleagues, must navigate the challenges that we face like the sea itself. City authorities are, after all, the closest democratic institution to the people.
The delegates signed a joint statement, the Florence Charter, illustrating the commitment of church and state for the good of the Mediterranean. This week, the White House unveiled a new plan to tackle COVID-19. The first part is to offer a one-stop test-to-treat system at hundreds of pharmacies, community health centers, and other sites starting this month. If you're positive, you go home with FDA antiviral medicine for free. The hope is to allow Americans to get treatment faster. The other goals of the plan include preparing for new variants, preventing business and school shutdowns, and helping vaccinate the rest of the world and save lives. The cost of this plan has not been revealed. Last year's COVID relief package cost almost $2 trillion.
Thank you, first of all, to the university students who are the heart of this dialogue. They are our life.
The passion, ideas, and energy of youth. The Pope reaches out to young people as part of the Synod on Synodality. EWTN News In Depth will be right back. An inspirational online encounter between Pope Francis and more than 100 university students from North, Central, and South America. The program, called Building Bridges North-South, was sponsored by Loyola University, Chicago.
I want to begin with dialogue with you because I like talking to young people. I become younger myself and I need youth because I'm a bit old, as you know. So this helps me to feel your voices.
The webinar dialogue with students from 58 universities in 21 countries was centered on the topics of human migration and displacement. Part of the Synod on Synodality, the students had met in virtual study groups ahead of the time with faculty facilitators to discuss the issues and decide what they wanted to say to the Pope.
To prepare, our group dug to migration's root causes and there found the issue that profoundly worries our generation: climate change. Catholic teaching can inspire action. The Church has tremendous capacity and responsibility to act. No U.S. diocese has committed to carbon neutrality, and few parishes use clean energy. U.S. Catholic leaders' failure to share and enact the Church's own climate teachings is disillusioning young people.
As you hear, the students took their mission seriously, and the Pope thanked them for their sincere contributions, saying he learned from their hopes, dreams, and intellectual curiosity. He said he thinks the dialogue will indeed build bridges to the future. The program was billed as a synodal encounter as the Church seeks feedback in Catholic listening sessions around the globe. Dr. Matthew Bunson, EWTN News Executive Editor and DC Bureau Chief, joins us now to discuss. Matthew, is the Pope's discussion with young people an illustration of what he means about synodality? I know there's a lot of skepticism.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what Pope Francis is asking the whole of the Church to do. We've seen this from the very beginning of this synodal process leading up to the Synod of Bishops in 2023 in Rome in October. What he's done is to ask for these listening sessions. So the Holy Father is actually engaging in one of these listening sessions. As we have just heard, it is eliciting a variety of responses, a wide variety of opinions and perspectives. But this is what Francis wants. He wants to hear from the peripheries. But as we also saw, he wants to be very focused also in intergenerational dialogue. But as an important corrective here, too, or a reminder, the Secretary General for the Synod of Bishops, Cardinal Mario Grech, has reminded people this week that this is not a sociological experiment, that the Synod of Bishops is not charged with changing church teaching, but this is part of a discernment and listening process.
That's right. The Pope was very quick to clarify for students that it's not a change of theology or a change for the Church, but a change of how we react to the times. How important then is it for this dialogue of generations, especially with young Latino Catholics, to take place?
Well, Pope Francis has made this intergenerational dialogue one of the key talking points for quite some time. As he says, he's old, but he also stresses the value and importance of the generations talking to each other. He used in his general audience just recently the observation or the description that young people who do not talk to the older generations are like a tree that is losing its roots. And of course, a tree that loses its roots is not going to survive for very long. So Francis wants to hear from young people, but it also goes the other way. Young people need to listen to the older generations who have at least the accumulation of time, if not necessarily wisdom.
That's exactly right. Rooted in great church teaching and rooted in our families. Is there anything you think that is worth adding for our listeners about how this process is moving forward?
Yeah, I think for all of us, we have probably who are active in parishes and dioceses, we've received invitations to listening sessions. All of this, remember, is going to be part of a wider process on a continental level. So we're looking at the USCCB here in the U.S., and then it all gets shifted back to Rome, where there's going to be a great deal of work and, I suspect, a certain amount of controversy heading into the Synod of Bishops next year.
An exciting year to look forward to. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Good to be with you.
When we return, a look back at one full year of Catholic news coverage. EWTN News In Depth celebrates serving you on our first anniversary.
This week marks the one-year anniversary of our program, EWTN News In Depth. During these last 12 months, we've been privileged to bring you top stories in the Catholic Church and reports impacting the faithful worldwide. A few moments now to reflect on the wide-ranging topics we've covered.
Viva el Papa! Viva el Papa!
Papa Francis, welcome to Iraq, where you give the message of peace.
Pope Francis's historic trip to Iraq. The International Eucharistic Congress in Budapest.
And you can hear some of the controversy brewing in some of the debates the canon lawyers are having in social media and in some of the Catholic media.
And controversy in Germany as some Catholic bishops bless same-sex unions and propose revolutionary moves in direct opposition to church teaching. Our program has brought you on-the-ground, worldwide Catholic coverage of stories from around the globe.
What will this visit of Pope Francis mean to Greece and to Catholics here?
This could be an opportunity to think again
and to ask themselves, what about my faith?
And he's sending a message that the relationship between Muslims and Christians matters. You know, Christians historically have been an important part of Iraq, and they have a right to stay in their homeland.
With first-hand analysis of religious persecution abroad,
the people who care for human rights, religious freedom, or claim to care about these issues should take a stand.
And threats to religious freedom in the U.S., from the Equality Act.
It is also very troubling because it is not merely about religious freedom, it's really also about freedom of conscience.
To Title IX exemptions. Is it legal for the government to take away an exemption like this?
The lawsuit says that the government is forbidden to allow an exemption like this.
And healthcare mandates that pressure religious doctors and hospitals. We provided insights on major Supreme Court cases that could alter the future of our nation. Like Dobbs versus Jackson, which could affect the right to abortion.
When you have a brutal abortion process, it feels that pain.
Seasoned scholars, church leaders, and professionals weighed in on complex topics like gender identity.
It really just steamrolls right over females' rights, but also just obliterates our common understanding of the human person.
And growing secularism and immigration.
The first thing I would say is that we all are immigrants in this country. All the immigrants, we all have to have the understanding that we have to integrate in this culture.
EWTN News In Depth focused on transparency, digging into scandals facing our church, like the sex abuse crisis and financial fraud at the Vatican. And we shared the humanitarian work of the church in disaster zones in the U.S.
Mayfield, Kentucky is block after block of nothing but rubble. And now the recovery effort underway, and among those helping out, the Catholic Church.
And third world nations.
That they need to keep working for the betterment of each other.
We work to bring you unique interviews on major church initiatives, including the Synod on Synodality.
So you get that kind of joyful, I'd say energetic response from dioceses. And it's happening around the world.
Changes in the demographics of our faith.
Over the years, as we go forward, the numbers in Africa will keep growing.
The impact of COVID.
We did see quite a bit of change within our enrollment after those first months of COVID.
And the needs of the growing church.
Hope to respond to the huge need for evangelization for first and second generation Latinos.
Worldwide.
We have a very weak church, at least in Western Europe. For renewal, we need to go back to Christ.
Our hope is that our coverage empowered you and brought you new insights and clarity to issues impacting our global church. And that's a wrap on one full year of EWTN News In Depth. I'm Montse Alvarado. Thank you for allowing us into your homes over the last 12 months. Next week, we bring you more on the conflict in Ukraine and more as we strive to bring you news important to your Catholic life. See you next time.